You're very welcome on to episode 3 of the Matchbook Cheltenham Trail. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, and delighted to be joined this week and every week by Matt Toombs and Donn McClean. And I hate to be Mr. Positive, but the theme for this week, for the third week in a row, it was very close to 10 out of 10 in terms of how good the racing was, in my opinion, watching it both Saturday, Sunday, and across the week as well. There's a few good races on Friday. So very much looking forward to getting the thoughts of Matt and Donn. If you're new to the show, what we do is we sort of want to use Matt's Cheltenham trends. So, for example, the fighting fifth, what sort of winner or beaten horses and what races they end up in the Cheltenham Festival, that sort of thing. So we use that for as many races as possible, and we get the thoughts of Matt, obviously, on those trends, and Donn on the trends, but also the view from Ireland as well. So very much looking forward to that, and thanks so much for all the feedback and comments so far. Get your thoughts or any questions you have for Matt and Donn. Either reach out to myself, or you can comment on YouTube or on Twitter. And before we get going, I want to point you in the direction of our current sign-up offer. It is the most generous one we currently have before Christmas. So if you enter the bonus code POD50, POD50, you get £50 worth in free bets when you bet £50. Full T's and C's available on screen, but also on matchbook.com/promotions. Lads, let's get straight into it. So we're going to review the races, and then you guys are going to have 3 eye catchers at the end as well. Incidentally, after Christmas, we'll look towards Cheltenham-specific races. But Matt, how about you give us the trend and let Donn kick off here, because this was just an insane race, the fighting fifth. So give us the trends for this race, and I'll let Donn pick up off the back of that.
Yeah, I was all prepared to talk about how deep a race it was, how old school trends about not underestimating the beaten horses might be in play. But trends are based on typical renewals of a race. Freak races like this, probably not very trends compatible, but the simple trend is, since it became a Grade 1 in 2004, the Fighting Fifth has produced 5 champion hurdle winners, 3 of which were doing the double.
Yeah, Donn, I'd no bet in the race yet. I screamed at the top of my lungs when Constitution Hill fell. It was just so dramatic. Glad both horses that fell obviously are okay.
Yeah, like what drama, Dan. Again, like it was quite incredible, wasn't it? When Constitution Hill came down, he jumped the first, just popped over the first flight, and then just kind of crazy that it happened again, and very similar to the fall at the Cheltenham Festival in the Champion Hurdle. And you know, there was no pressure. It was only the second flight in the race, and look, it's all been properly discussed even in the meantime in the last couple of days. But like you, when he came down, you're just kind of, you know, as I discussed before, the three horses going into the race had questions to answer. The New Lion was dropping back down in trip to 2 miles and had to prove, top class novice though he had to prove that he could cut it in open company. And Constitution Hill obviously had fallen in 2 of his 3 previous runs and had that abject performance at Punchestown, so he had to bounce back. And then Amsterdam, who, like, Amsterdam suddenly became part of the Champion Hurdle talk without doing too much. Like when he won the Grade 3 hurdle at Ferryhouse last November, beat Caliconti there, it was kind of, you know, you never know, if he improves a good bit more, he could be on the coattails of the Champion Hurdle class. And all he did in the meantime was win another Grade 3 race at Naas at 10-1 on, and suddenly he's 10 or 12-1 for the Champion Hurdle, for last year's Champion Hurdle. Of course, he missed that, but he still remained in the Champion Hurdle picture. But for me and for most people, he still had to prove that he belonged there. He still had to go and do it against these top-class 2-mile hurdlers. And then to have Constitution Hill taken out of the race so early, as you say, Dan, great that he got up, and that Nico de Bonville was good. It took him a little while to get up, but he was up and away well. So that was the most important thing. But, you know, all the different options as to what to do with Constitution Hill now, where is he going to go? What's he going to do, if anything? And I think that the conclusion is, yes, he's going to do something. But what that is, it's just so hard. And all the, you know, Barry Geraghty and jockeys who know about these things have just, you know, and Nico de Bonville and Nicky Henderson, they're just scratching their heads what to do next, or how do you try and rectify this. And then the New Lion, like, he had a little jink, didn't he, at the top of the hill, when he just kind of had a little look to the left of the wing when he was supposed to go to the right of it to jump the flight, which he did. And then for him to go down to the second last, it was the same flight of hurdles actually, and it was actually the same hurdle, on the one on the inside, the second last on the first circuit, and then the second last on the second circuit, where he came down. And then Amsterdam had every chance to go and win the race. He couldn't beat Golden Ace all the while. Maybe Golden Ace has been a little bit underrated. I know that she got well beaten in that 2-horse race behind Katira, but that obviously wasn't a running. She's the Champion Hurdle winner from last season. She's the reigning Champion Hurdler who went off at 23.0, which is kind of crazy for a fighting fifth hurdle just a couple of months later. That's probably unprecedented. I'm sure it is. So look, there was so much going on. In the end, Golden Ace, fair play to her and to Jeremy Scott and Lorcan Williams as well, because she was good. She battled on well. She beat Amsterdam, which was a good performance. And Amsterdam, you have to think he ran his race, even though it was a seasonal return. Paul Townend went over to ride him. So even though he was a little bit weak in the market, I'm sure he'll come on for this, but he's only a 5-year-old and he's likely raced. That's only his 5th run over hurdles, but he still ran his race and Golden Ace beat him. So, in all of this, she probably didn't get the accolade that a champion hurdler usually gets when she won the champion hurdle. She probably hasn't got due respect for winning the fighting fifth hurdle either, but she's obviously a high class mare, and she beat Amsterdam on merit. Would the New Line have won if he'd stood up? That's the imponderable, isn't it? And I think if he would have won, he would have just about won, because Lorcan Williams hadn't fully gone for Golden Ace at the time either, and she stayed on well to go away from Amsterdam in the end. So it would have been a good race if the New Line had stood up. But yeah, look, it just threw the whole champion hurdle picture into turmoil. But I think Golden Ace is an admirable mare and probably should get a little more respect than she's getting for winning the fighting fifth hurdle.
Yeah, even purely for just running in the race in the first place. I mean, it just shows you if you take a chance, who knows? Matt, the similarities with last year's champion hurdle or last season's champion hurdle is insane.
It was an insane race, wasn't it? Again, yeah. I mean, the vibes before and after the race, Constitution had been working the houses down at home. The engine's probably still there. He looked enthusiastic at the start, unlike a Punchestown. But as Donn said, he jumped the first well, but he just took off miles before the second, landed on it, came down. It's not as if he doesn't want to jump. He was jumping hurdles loose. He's just guessing. He seems to have lost the plot when he's on a long stride. People, including Nicky, giving out about white hurdles, padded hurdles. I don't have the knowledge to have an opinion on that. I think white noise in Constitution Hill's head's more likely to be the issue. Nicky's an emotional man in an emotional situation, so I could understand the comments made straight afterwards. My hunch is the same as Donn's, that you'll probably get one more run out of him before they draw stumps. My guess is they probably will give him one more run over hurdles and see. It's just such a shame for the sport. He's one of the most brilliant hurdlers I've seen. About 180 hurdlers, really rare. For the sake of the sport, you want them to strut their stuff, but that is sport. New Lion, he was left in front, and as Donn said, he looked like he wanted to run out the fourth. And I agree with Donn. I'm not sure whether he'd have won or not had he not come down, but it would have been very close. So you can kind of judge him on that sort of level of form. But even when he did fall, he sort of launched himself half sideways at that, inside it. So I rewatched his previous 5 races looking for any signs of quirkiness and couldn't find any. Although not in front then, he'd been ridden with plenty of light in his early races. Did wander a little at the second and third, the Challow, but I thought he'd looked to have a sound attitude. Where he put his head down and battled to beat the yellow clay looked really good. So the only thing I can think of is he'd been held up previously and not got to the front until late on, let alone been racing alone as he was here. Perhaps going that 2-mile open Grade 1 gallop without any company was what messed with his head. And you can see why, dropping down in trip, they wanted to ride him more forward. Perhaps he didn't enjoy it. The way he was travelling before falling suggests he might not be a 2-miler anyway. I judged that after his next run. But I've seen horses run out once and never do it again, always shown a good attitude afterwards. But I've seen plenty who, once they start showing temperament, keep doing it. So if he goes to the Christmas hurdle, perhaps they drop him in and find out whether he has to toe that way. His attitude is a bit under suspicion. He was only pushed out to 5.5 for the champion hurdle. Looks a bit of an underreaction to me. He's 34.0 for the Stayers hurdle. Wouldn't be the biggest surprise if that's where he ends up. And that left Amsterdam cruising along. To me, he looked really reluctant when push came to shove. He looked to shirk the issue. Now, perhaps it's greediness. Although it's his 3rd season racing, it's only his 5th start. And it was the first time in his 3 runs for Willie he'd had to battle. So if you're charitable, you give him the benefit of the doubt, say he'll learn from it. If you were less charitable, you'd say he doesn't look like he fancies a battle. And that left the wonderful Golden Ace Jeremy Scott team with another huge win. I'm very much in Donn's camp. I don't think she's quite getting the credit she deserves because everyone's focusing on the supposed big guns. And it's wonderful that they've got to have a go attitude. There aren't many yards left. Yeah, the Tristan Davises or the Tizzards do it, but the sport's poorer for the conservative programming. So I was really pleased with that. It's Jeremy Scott's first winner of the season. And given she scoped dirty when flopping at Wetherby 4 weeks ago, terrific training performance to get her back to win this. So although the bare form of this, 2 lengths in front of 151 rated Nemean line, long way from what would be needed at a champion hurdle. Suddenly the division's looking thin again. And if the yard form improves, she could improve plenty with it and be a contender in an incident-free champion hurdle. She was only beaten 5 lengths by Stake Man at Punchestown. He might be odds on if he was still fit and well for the champion hurdle. So 15.0 looks about right. It was an extraordinary race. I was hoping it would answer enough questions for me to play Anti-Post, but the picture is murkier than ever.
Yeah, that's nearly the best thing about the early races. Sometimes there are more questions than answers. Fascinating race. Could talk about it for the hour, to be honest with you. We're going to cover Ferry House 5 races, starting with the Hatton's Grace. I was surprised by this trend, Matt, maybe just given Tiapu performance and going on to win the Stayers in previous years. So tell us the trend and your thoughts on this year's race. I mean, what a finish again.
Yeah, we had some absolutely brilliant finishes, none better than this one. The trend is that runners in the Stayers hurdle, 2 from 37 this century, 6 going off 4.0 or shorter. And I think that's because Ferry House very much a speed track, and the real Stayers generally can't keep up. One of those 2 Stayers hurdle winners was Cider Burley, who'd never go the gallop in the Hatton's Grace, beaten a distance. So the Stayers hurdle is a race where the gallop varies between renewals. If there's a strong gallop, a horse suited by the relative test of speed in the Hatton's Grace may get outstayed. One of the reasons why Cider Burley was able to turn round the forward with Teahupoo. You have to take that trend in the context of the Irish staying division is much stronger these days. But even so, I do think it is a very much more champion hurdle trial normally. No champion hurdle horses in it this year. Last year when they crawled, Teahupoo got done for Toba Lossiemouth. So this year, Cashledale Lad made sure it was a decent gallop. Ballyburn, who was apparently a handful beforehand, spent the first half of the race with his head almost down on the ground. By contrast, Teahupoo, very professional, looked to be coming to take Cashledale Lad as they came to the last, where that one fell, having run a blinder to that point. But crucially, Teahupoo got in close to the last, lost all his momentum landing, and that gave Ballyburn a chance. He landed running and nearly mowed Teahupoo down on the run-in, just getting done on the nod. So your first thought might be, oh, another few strides, Ballyburn would have won easily, but I'm not so sure. He was only closing whilst Teahupoo was regaining his momentum. And if you look at them 100 yards beyond the line, they're still side by side. I think if he jumped the last quickly, Teahupoo would have run out a ready winner. But he goes really well fresh, and Ballyburn's more likely to improve for the run and for the experience of hurdling again after a season chasing. So if they met again over this trip, I'd say it'd be very close, but both are going up to 3 miles now. Willie was asked by Gary O'Brien afterwards if he thought, as Patrick had mooted, that Ballyburn might be too keen for 3 miles. Willie was quite dismissive of that. But his view, at least as far as he was expressing it, was purely based on pedigree. Ballyburn's pedigree does shout stamina, but that didn't convince me. Pedigrees are indicative, not definitive. Willie suggested they'd make the running over 3 miles, presumably at Leopardstown at Christmas. That's a bold strategy, but equally it should answer the question. He's some horse if he can run that keenly and win top-class 3 mile hurdles. I'd want to see it before backing him. Worth giving Mystical Power a mention. He was second in the Supreme, won the Grade 1 equivalents at Aintree and Punchestown 2 seasons ago. Last season was a disaster, bombed in Grade 1s over 2 miles, pulled up in the Stayers hurdle. There have been various comments that Paul's really pleased about how he was travelling at Cheltenham until he lost his action, thought he'd be involved in the finish. He was awash with sweat here. The vibes are that he'll be brought slowly along this season, trying to get his confidence back. He was running a solid enough race when taken out after the last. He's 34.0 for the Stayers. That does feel a race for a springer this season. He's one to keep an eye on. And whilst I don't want to bet on that yet, that's a more attractive price than the horribly skinny 3.5 about Ballyburn and 5.0 about Teahupoo.
Okay, fascinating division, the Stayers. It always is for various reasons in different seasons. Ballyburn's head carriage, Donn, as Matt touched on there, it's extraordinary to watch so early on in the race. You're like dismissing this horse. I wasn't watching the exchanges live, but surely he's drifting, even though it's becoming his style of running.
Yeah, I thought it was more pronounced on Sunday yesterday than it had been before. Like we always know that's the way he races, and he does race keenly. But I thought his head was even lower. I'm not sure if you can measure low head carriage through a race, but I think it seemed to be even lower than it usually is, or than it was last season. But yeah, like what a race and what a day for Gordon Elliott and Jack Kennedy. Like the Hatton's Grace hurdle, Drinmore Chase, Royal Bond hurdle. It's a rare treble to do. Like they used to be all three Grade 1s. Now the Royal Bonds are Grade 2, and we'll come on to them now in a second. And to win the juvenile hurdle as well, like the 4 graded races on the day, including 2 Grade 1s, and they won the 4 of them. And this was the last of the 4. And Teahupoo, yeah, like it was a it was just a great race to watch. And when they went by the line, I didn't know who was up, actually. I wouldn't have been surprised, even looking at the freeze frame, I wouldn't have been surprised if it had been a dead heat. It really was by a whisker that Teahupoo won. But yeah, a big performance by Teahupoo on a seasonal return. He's now joined Limestone Lads, Solarina, Applestate, Honeysuckle as a 3-time Hatton's Grace Hurdle winner. And as Matt was saying, like the Hatton's Grace Hurdle, I think it's a great distance at this time of year to have a 2.5 mile hurdle, because you have, it can be a pointer to the Stayers Hurdle, and generally horses in the Hatton's Grace Hurdle at this time of year, they can step out and trip, but it's also a race for 2 mile hurdlers, as we know. But for Teahupoo to win another one, the ground probably wasn't as soft as he likes it. The trip of 2.5 miles on that ground doesn't make it as extreme or as tough a test as he likes, and he still went and won it. I'm in Matt's camp on Ballyburn's stamina. It's not conclusive. Like he is Bradford. He's a half brother or a full brother to Manila Daddy, who's all stamina and noble endeavour. Good 3 mile chaser. But he's only been beyond 2 miles 5.5 furlongs twice, and they're in the last 2 chases. And obviously they're inconclusive. As a novice, he ran in the Bearing Bingham at Cheltenham, not the Albert Bartlett, and then he went to Punchestown. He ran the Alana Holmes, the 2.5 mile race, not the 3 mile race, the Daily Mirror, I think it was. So I was kind of surprised that Teahupoo kind of was left around about the same for the Stayers Hurdle, and Ballyburn was cut into favouritism in front of him generally in most lists. So I was kind of surprised at that. I thought Teahupoo ran at least as good a pointer to the Stayers Hurdle as Ballyburn did. Cashildale Lad, yeah, he put up a big performance, and you kind of thought that he might. Like, he was very good when he won in Kerry, and then was one at long odds on at Down Royal. That was only his 8th run over hurdles. He's won 4 of them, and he was right there. Like, I thought when Teahupoo came up on his outside, he'd wilt, but he didn't. And okay, he wasn't going to win. Teahupoo had taken his measure when they rose to the last. It was a pity he came down, but he ran a big race. He's only a 5-year-old as well. There could be a bit more to come from him. Mystical Power, as Matt said, fascinating horse still by Galileo, out of any power. So you'd think that 3 miles would be his trip again. Another horse who barred the Stayers Hurdle last year has been campaigned over further, and as Matt said, finished second behind State Steel in a Supreme Novices Hurdle. Maxim generally tends to hit form after his 3rd or 4th run, so he is higher in the handicap now. He's 153. He won at Leopardstown last February off 137, but he's a horse who can pop up in these big handicaps. He won the Boyne Hurdle last year as well, so the Boyne Hurdle might be just a race to keep in mind in February for Maxim again, because he's a horse who just does tend to take a couple of runs before he seems to hit his stride through a season. It's a pity that the 3 horses came down at the last. Good that they all got up and that they were all well afterwards. But I thought it was a big performance by Teahupoo, and I think his performance here might be a little bit underrated. Like the Stayers Hurdle, it used to be a young horses rate, but Thistlebrack won it as an 8-year-old. Sierra de Burley won it as an 11-year-old a couple of years ago. Bob Ollinger was 10 when he won it in March. So it's kind of, and Teahupoo, he's only 8 rising 9. Like, you kind of think that he's been around for so long, but he's not kind of as old as the degree to which the sense is that he's been around for a long time would suggest. So I think Teahupoo might not have, again, like the winner of the Fighting Fifth, might not have got the accolade that he should have got for winning this.
Okay, yeah, it's fascinating. Like you said, it's because it's 2.5. It's hard to know how they would have gone on over 3, despite Ballyburn finishing stronger. So question mark still over Ballyburn's stamina. We'll stick with you, Donn, for the Drim more. I'll bring Matt's trend in after you analyse the race here. Surprisingly, again, a surprising trend. But I was expecting Romeo Coolio to win. I wasn't expecting it to be that impressive. Is that a fair assessment after the race?
Yeah, I expected Gold Dancer to get closer to him than he did as well. I thought Romeo Coolio was he was so good. Like, he was very good at Down Royal in winning his beginner's chase. That was 2.5 miles. And they took out 4 of the fences because of the low-lying sun. The fences that he jumped very well, and he won as easily as he liked from Cocktail Divan, who I thought enhanced the form by running with his run in the Florida Pearl chase next time. But here, I thought, like, Gold Dancer came into the race on a real upward curve. He was an expensively bought horse. He was tried in a high grade over hurdles. He didn't quite cut it over hurdles, but then back over fences. Like, he beat Westport Cove in the Grade 3 race at Galway. Westport Cove went on and won the Kilbegnet chase and then won the Craddockstown, so that form was enhanced. And then at Tipperary on his previous run, he was really good. His jumping was very, very good in winning another Grade 3 race there. He beat Down Mexico Way into second place, and Down Mexico Way was rated, went and won a handicap chase at Goring Park next time off a mark, and I think 136. He's now rated 143. So that's strong, solid form. He seemed to run his race yesterday, but Romeo Coolio, he just hardly broke sweat. He just traveled around so easily. His jumping was very good again, and when Jack Kennedy gave him a little squeeze, he came right away from his rivals. So I just thought it was a I know he was an odds-on shot, so you expect odds-on shots to go and win, but Connections have to have been so happy with this performance by Romeo Coolio. They couldn't have expected to be any better than it was. Of course, the Drinmore is 2.5 miles, and now it's back down to 2 or over 3. There's no 2.5 mile race at the Cheltenham Festival anymore, so that's good. It forces the novices into either 2 mile or 3 mile races. Great for competition. Interesting that Jack Kennedy said afterwards that over hurdles he kind of thought, even though he ran in the Supreme Novices Hurdle and ran a big race in the Supreme to finish third, he thought that over fences he could drop and trip. And that said, he was kind of mentioned as the kind of Gold Cup type horse earlier in his career. But it's interesting that if Jack Kennedy's kind of saying that over fences, he's so good over his fences, he could drop and trip, and it has to be, all things being equal between now and Cheltenham Festival in March. It's going to be Arkle or Brown Advisory Chase. And who knows, I'm sure he'll be a contender in either. But I just think that he's a pacey horse now, and given that Jack said that he could drop and trip, given he's so fast and efficient over his fences, then yeah, to me that's interesting.
Yeah, another 2.5 mile specialist for you, Matt, to analyse.
Excellent. Yes, hopefully the toys are back in the pram and we're not going to have the sort of Croke Park type scenario this year. Interesting trend here. All 18 Grade 1 Drinmore winners that ran at the festival were beaten, but beaten horse is 7 from 63 at the festival. It's easy to get carried away with a stellar performance by a novice at this stage of the season. And it's not just because these days plenty of the best novices won't have been out yet, especially the hurdlers, but also horses thrive at different times of the seasons. They're trained in different ways. Well-known Gordon's horses are generally more forward at this time of the year than Willie's. So the best novice in the autumn's not always the best novice in the spring, and this race has been a good history of that. That said, there is something a bit freakish about the stat. Sooner or later, we're going to get a Drinmore winner following up the festival with due one. And you absolutely shouldn't say, with a trend like this, the Drinmore winner won't win at the festival, just that most years they're likely to be a bit over bet in anti-post markets after winning at Fairy House. And they look to go a good gallop here. And as you boys have said, it was a bit of a wow performance from Romeo Coolio. His only disappointing performance last season in the Royal Bomb, but that clearly not the meeting is the issue. He travelled and jumped well. Even when he was on a wrong stride, he landed with momentum and absolutely bolted up. He looks a natural over fences, and he jumps like he could be a 2-miler. Whilst he didn't have the speed to go with Kopek de Board and the Supreme, the speed with which he jumps fences may make him a different proposition should they meet again. Although the British fences aren't as stiff as those at the top Irish tracks, there are more of them, typically 2 more in a race. So for a horse who gets into a rhythm like Romeo Coolio, that's a plus. And as Don's alluded to, the big debate, what do you do trip-wise? Fairy House, sharp track. So whilst, as Donn was saying, often staying novices campaigned at intermediate trips at this stage, runners from this shouldn't be underestimated in the Arkle. So the relative record since this became a Grade 1 in 1994, Arkle 13 runners, 1 winner, 6 places. Broadway 23 runners, 1 winner and 5 places. And as is often the case, the 2 mile novice chase division looks shallow at the moment. Gordon said he doesn't want to go 3 miles at this stage of Romeo Coolio's career, which I don't know quite what this stage means, but it makes it sound like the Broadway may be unlikely. In the Racing Post stable trip at the start of the season, he said he hoped he was an Arkle course. And as Donn was saying, Jack said he's really a quick horse, go over fences. He said also that he preferred going a stride quicker than he actually was going in this race. So that sounds like dropping back in trip, maybe a possibility. I'd like to see him go to the reinstated 2 mile 1, Grade 1 at Leopardstown at Christmas, take on Kopek de Board, find out where you are so you can make a plan for the route to the spring. He's 7.0 for the Arkle, which looks about right. The others were well beaten off. As Donn was saying, Gold Dancer had good form, but summer form tends to get exposed here. Horses that are running a chase between June and September, 0 from 38, the Century coming into that, and Gold Dancer's added to that. Old Man Dingle, he showed up for a long way and then really faded. He was beaten less than 4 lengths in the big 2 mile handicap at DRF, maybe worth a try back at the minimum trip. But Romeo Coolio, absolute pleasure to watch.
Absolutely. And we'll stick with you, Matt, on this one because it actually feeds into a little bit of the matchbook bonus. The Royal Bond, and the winner was Cocktail Brute, who obviously won his maiden hurdle at Punchestown. And we have a bonus this year, €50,000 for connections that win a maiden hurdle or bumper at Punchestown before the festival, go on to win a grade 1 at the festival. And I'm looking at this lad here thinking Matchbook are in a spot of bother here, to be honest.
Yeah, you could be right. I mean, he's a real contender, and there are 3 Grade 1 novice hurdles at the Punchestown Festival. So at that stage of the season, a few of the horses will be finished, not many British horses. So it makes it a little bit easier, and he looks up to that grade. The trend is that runners in Grade 1 novice hurdles at the festival, 9 from 46 this century, 53 point, 116% profit. And 4 of those 9 were in the last 9 seasons. So other than the Brave Inca at DRF, this has remained the strongest novice hurdle all season, if judged in terms of producing Grade 1 novice hurdle winners at the festival. Yet bizarrely, it's downgraded to a Grade 2. Prize money is still the same, so hopefully we'll keep getting strong fields. We did lose the favourite Love Me Tender, who's a late scratch of the temperature, which was a shame. Donn's got Blake as an eye catcher. I thought he was very interesting, so I'll let Donn talk about him. But Cocktail Brute, he's a half-brother to Munster national winner Gevry. Try and go a strong gallop, I thought, run the finish out of his rivals, particularly the flat rivals like Blake. And he battled well, Cocktail Brute, showed a good attitude, just got the verdict. Gordon Elliott said he'd been shown plenty of speed at home. It'll be interesting to see what his trip is come the spring. He looked to enjoy himself bowling along in front. On slow ground, he could attempt to do that in the Supreme, 34.0 for that. Equally, if he'd settle better in behind horses than in the Bearing Bingham, which is usually steady run and favours the speed horses, with the 2 mile graded form, that might be ideal. It's a little bit betwixt and between with him. The eye catcher for me was Gavin Cromwell's The Passing Wife. He won 2 bumpers in the summer of 2024, then been off 15 months from returning in what's now looking a hot maiden at Goran at the start of November. The winner of the Devil hasn't run again yet, but Skylight Hustle was an impressive winner the previous day, returned to him later. The Passing Wife got done for tactical speed after the 3rd last year, flew home, going down by a length and a half in the end. And Royal Bond runners, 2 from 6 in the Albert Bartlett. Penhill was 4th, Verywood 5th in the Royal Bond. Like the Passing Wife, been running solely around the minimum trip at this stage of the season. And given the form Gavin Cromwell's horses, this was a really promising run for the Passing Wife. Be fascinating to see where he goes for the rest of the season. He's one for the tracker.
Yeah, Donn, if you want to focus on the beaten horses, specifically Blake, and take your first eye catcher now by all means. But Cocktail Brute, first of all.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with anything that Matt said about the Passing Wife. He actually won the last race on the last day of the Galway Festival a couple of years ago. I think he might have been Gavin Cromwell's only winner, like first winner of that meeting. But yeah, he's been off for a little while, and yeah, I know Matt likes the runner up in the race the last day, in which he finished 3rd behind the Devil, but he stayed on really strongly. His finishing speed were finishing sections were the fastest of the entire race. But I think this was a really good Royal Bond. Of course, we were missing Love Me Tender, which was a real shame, and I thought before the race that was going to detract from the race, but it looked like a very, very good race. Cocktail Brute had a good pace. The finishing speed was 99% of overall speed, so the pace was strong. And Cocktail Brute, like he's obviously a better hurdler than Bumper Horse. He finished 4th in the Grade 2 bumper at the Dublin Racing Festival behind Kilcannon. He was only beaten 2 lengths, and he finished 3rd in the entry bumper as well, the Grade 2 bumper there. But he beat Kilcannon in that maiden hurdle at Punchestown, which might cost Matchbook a few quid. So he reversed places with him, and then coming on here, like he travelled so well into his race. He led. Jack Kennedy just seemed to be allow him go along at his own pace. His jumping was good, and he found plenty to repel the challenge of Blake on the run to the line with the Passing Wife finishing off down the near side. But yeah, Blake, like there's an awful lot to like about him. He was a good horse on the flat. He was with Peter Chapelheim, actually had a rating in the 90s. He got the Leopardstown race on the flat in the steward's room on a 2nd run for Noel Meade, and then at Down Royal last time he was really impressive in winning. He again travelled like the most likely winner from a long way out and quickened up smartly, but they didn't go a great pace in that race. The finishing speed was 112% of overall speed. So going into the race yesterday, I was thinking if he was going to win the race, it was going to have to be off a sedate pace and then use his flat rate speed again. But it was the opposite. And Cocktail Brewed and setting the pace. Actually, Blake up on the outside. Donn and Myler just seemed to be the more animated of the two jockeys. Jack Kennedy just seemed to be holding on to more than Donn and Myler was on the outside. And he just seemed to have to just kind of, like he wasn't riding him along or anything, but he just seemed to be squeezing him along a little bit just in order to keep tabs on Cocktail Brewed. But then he found lots. Like he really picked up from the second last. He went down by just a head. He closed on Cocktail Brew all the way to the line. And that's only his third run over hurdles as well. Blake, he can come forward from this. He's proven his versatility in terms of pace. He can come off a fast pace, come off a slow pace. And I think a slow pace or slower pace will probably play more to his strengths. When that flat race at Leopardstown was on heavy ground, so he shouldn't have any difficulty on easier ground. I know National Hunt soft or heavy is different to flat, soft or heavy, but hopefully he'll be okay as we move even more deeply into the winter. And yeah, I think he could be a big player among the novice hurdlers this season.
Okay, a couple of horses to take from that race. Let's move on to the Ferryhouse Grade 3 Juvenile Hurdle. Matt, hit us with your trend and your thoughts on the race.
So trends are: winner finished 0-4, 3, 0, 1P, 5, 6, 4, 2, 1, 4 in the Triumph, but a 0 from 27 in the Fred Winter. And that's a decent record in the Triumph for a Grade 3 race. Triumph is a race where winners begin their hurdling careers very different times. Ponos, hurdling debutant. 3 of the 4 previous winners weren't even novices, having won in France the previous season. So punters shouldn't be prejudiced against races like this on the basis they're too early to produce a Triumph winner. Key here was how much better Mange 2 settled than on her debut for Gordon at Down Royal. She had the hood she wore in France back on, dropped in and made all the difference. With freshness out of her from that run, she looked much more professional here. She made a mistake 3 out, and that gave Narcisco hard first run, but Jack never looked worried, allowing her to coast into the race. I thought she was going to win comfortably coming to the last, and then when she jumped it better than Narcisco, I thought she'd win really easily. But he kept battling and didn't go away. She won by 2 3/4 lengths in the end. She had the advantage of race fitness, but equally she was conceding a £4 penalty here. The 17 losers have managed 4 places but no wins in the Triumph, so history isn't great for Narcisco Ha in that race. I'd be open-minded which of them would come out on top if they clashed again with no penalties. And horses progress or regress in all divisions during the season, working out what is likely to happen, part of the punting puzzle. But it's often most in point in the juvenile division, especially these days with plenty of the better juveniles not having had significant flat campaigns. There's a bigger scope for physical development in juveniles over the next 4 months, and that isn't always to their short-term advantage. So for those wanting to dip their toes into the anti-post market, there are an awful lot of unknowns in this division. Mange 2's 15.0, Narcisco Ha's 17.0. Wouldn't be a betting race for me at this stage.
Okay, yeah, Donn, coming off some of those trends, interesting that the Triumph, it's more of a Triumph race than a Fred Winter, albeit placing more than winning it.
Yeah, like you're kind of looking at horses in behind here. It could be Fred Winter horses, but like as Matt was saying, we're so early in the juvenile season. It's good chance we haven't seen the Triumph Hurdle winner yet, and won't for a little while. That said, this was a really interesting race. Like Narciso Ha from a newcomer, well, not a newcomer, having his first run for Willie Mullins. Remember, Willie de Hoel was in a similar boat in this race last year. He was sent off a 4-1 onshot and was favoured for the Triumph Hurdle before this race was run. He wasn't favoured for it afterwards, but I think he finished second in the end. But it was a fascinating race. I thought Mange 2 did well. I think Matt kind of covered everything with him, or with her, that she was just settled a lot better in the Down Royal race. It wasn't as good a race. She had to make her own running. She didn't settle at all. She wasn't wearing her hood. And in fact, the Wizard of Oz hadn't made a pretty bad mistake at the second last flight. It was in the balance at that point. I think she'd have won anyway, but especially looking at that race now in hindsight. But I thought she did well to win, given how free she was and how keen she was the last day. I think Gordon said afterwards that he shouldn't have taken the hood off, and it was back on yesterday. Unsurprisingly, she settled better in behind. It wasn't a great pace, 109% finishing speed, but she settled well off it, and she was able to pick up off it. The leader, I'll Be Handy, was jumping a little bit to his left. And watching the race live, I was thinking that Jack Kennedy was going to use that and move up on the inside whenever he jumped a bit to his left. But in the end, as they went around the home turn, Jack obviously decided he wanted to be close. He wanted to be closer to Narciso Ha than he was, so he moved her up on the outside, and it was a good move. Like Matt, I thought when she jumped on, she was going to win impressively, and she was pretty impressive in winning it. But you have to give Narciso Ha a lot of credit, I think, for keeping on as well as he did, and the two of them finished nicely clear of the rivals. I think they're two nice juveniles. Monge 2 is now 3 for 3 over hurdles, and she'll obviously get the £7 fillies allowance in a Triumph hurdle. So, and this is, this is a race been won by Lossimat before, Fildor, Zana here, Espoir d'Alain, even though it maybe not necessarily a massive pointer to winners of the Triumph hurdle, it's been won by good horses and for different, like Espoir d'Alain didn't make it to the Triumph hurdle that year, but of course he went and won the Champion hurdle the following year. So it can be a good race. And it looked like a good renewal this year, and I think Nasir Sohail, you can definitely make a case for him as a horse to follow going forward. But of the two of them, I thought Monge 2 was very good. I thought she showed a lot of pace, and yeah, I think she's the one. If I had to take one out of the race, it's Monge 2.
Okay, and we'll stick with you, Donn, for this beginner's chase. Saw a bit of this on social media, and I agree with this. So before you talk about the race, why do we have it at 11:36 on a Saturday? Are we missing a trip? Because like Matt will touch on the festival trends, but you don't need that. Like this race every year produces a really good horse.
Yeah, it's a hell of a race. I'm sure. Well, a lot of people will miss it. It is early. It's before 12 o'clock. It's in the morning. It's on Saturday morning. But no, as you said, I don't know, to answer your question, I don't know why, Dan. I don't know why it's as early as that in the morning. But I suppose something has to be that early in the morning. But no, it's a very strong case for moving it later in the day and giving it the space that it deserves, because it's been won by Empire Pass. Monkfish won it, Corvus Cross won it, the Storyteller won it. It's a very, very good race. It's a good beginner's chase, and no different this year. Strong beginner's chase with Jimmy DeSoy and the Big Western taking each other on, and Jacob's Ladder as well. Like they were three big players in the race. I thought Jimmy DeSoy was very good. It was the first chase. He jumped well. He's the Coral Cup winner from last year, of course. He won the Coral Cup off a hurdles mark of 146. He's now rated 155 over hurdles, and he won the Coral Cup impressively. He made all the running. He was a little bit weak in the market beforehand. I know he was sent off as favourite, but he did drift a little bit before the off. But he made all the running, jumped really well for Patrick Mullins, and I thought was always doing enough to hold off the challenge for the Big Westerner. Big landmark as well for Patrick Mullins, 900th winner, which is quite incredible, really, for an amateur rider to ride 900 winners. I'm sure the 1,000 is as a goal for now, and I'm sure he'll be working towards that. But the Big Westerner, she ran well. Like, she's the Doran's Pride hurdle winner from last season. She finished second behind Jasmine DeVoe in the Albert Bartlett hurdle when she was kind of hampered at the second last flight, which wasn't ideal for her. I'm not sure she'd have beaten Jasmine DeVoe either way, but it was still a big run. And she's obviously a chaser, and obviously chaser to be reckoned with. She's a half sister to Stay Away Faye, and Albert Bartlett hurdle winner as well for Paul Nichols. And she's a filly or mare who 2 miles, 5.5 furlongs on yielding to soft ground is probably not as stiff a test as she would ideally like. I think she'd be better stepped up to 3 miles, and better again on softer ground. She just does seem to love soft ground. So yeah, I think we'll see her in a better light when conditions are even more testing than they were on Saturday. But Jimmy DeSoy, very, very good. He's obviously a Cheltenham Festival winner as well, so not surprising that he's high on the list for the Brown Advisory Chase.
Yeah, Matt, that Carl Cup's quite decent in Portois that we'll get into. And even Colin Mustard was 5th, ended up, got off to a cracking start to this season. Looks above average renewal.
Yeah, it does. And you shouldn't be prejudiced against handicap form over hurdles like that. Top of the Game was second in the Coral Cup, went on to win the Broadway, and the Martin Pipe winner Don Poley followed up as well. So yeah, I thought he was really good. The trend here is that the last 14 renewals have produced 5 festival winners. There are some races whose inherent nature makes them good trials for a specific festival race. Some are just strong contests and therefore good festival trials more generally. And that's the case here. And the nature of the Irish Beginners Chase programme for those races without a rating ceiling in November and December forces the good horses to take each other on. And at the top tracks, you can only run now with the Gorham race gone. Here, Punchestown, Navan, Naas, Thurles, and at Leopardstown at Christmas. So horses learn much more from meaningful competition rather than taking on 1 or 2 inferior rivals. This is often the case in Britain. Jimmy DeSoy was quite weak, out from odds on to a shake, about 2.88. I think he went off. The Big Westerner was also weak, out to 3.75. Plenty were back, but only 4 got into it. And the 4 main protagonists all jumped pretty well. Jimmy DeSoy was certainly good, especially at the business end. Travelled really strong. He wasn't asked for anything till after the last by Patrick Mullins, comfortably on top at the line. And he was really strong at the end of the Coral Cup as well. So you look at that and you say, well, he'll stay 3 miles, but he has actually still got to prove it. He's 11.0 for the Broadway. There is a race where the Mullins' supposed lesser lights have won, stark contrast to the Arkle. And he doesn't have the obvious Stardust of final demand, but to me looks a real player in the division. The Big Westerner jumped soundly, if not quite as quickly as Jimmy DeSoy did, but 2 mile 5 on yielding to soft, probably at the bottom end of her stamina requirements. As Donn was saying, she did Doran's Pride winner last year. She looks a top prospect for mares novice races, but over 3 miles on soft ground, she could win a Grade 1 against the Geldings, I should think. What's important to remember about her is the way Henry trains his top novice chasers in their first beginner's chase. Both Manella Indo and Aplutari's Gold Cup winners beaten on chasing debut. He tends to leave them really needing a run, and they improve a lot. It'd be no surprise should she reverse the form, should they meet again, especially over 3 miles. Be interesting to see whether Henry targets the Broadway 17.0 or the Mares Chase 9.0 with her. The other two to mention, the other two up with the pace, Jacob's Ladder backed into 8.5 for the Sefton in April, run 2 solid races over fences. He looked to get done for tactical speed when the tempo increased here and stayed on. So he'll be interesting up in trip later in the season. He was rated 138 over hurdles, might be one for the Kim Muir. And Joystick had got a good mention from Patrick in the Racing Post Stable Tour as one who'd improve a lot for a fence. He ran well for a long way before weakening. Some of Willie's novices are really needing the run. He's best judged after another start. And there were plenty of good horses who were never in this. Might be handicap projects. It should produce plenty of winners during the season, but the first 2 look really good novices.
Okay, that's very house done, man. I'm taking from me. There's definitely a few horses there to keep in the notebook ahead of the Cheltenham Festival and the rest of the season in general. Let's move on to Newbury, Matt, and start with you in the Coral Gold Cup. And maybe more generally, before you hit your trend, that Dan Skelton's getting off to a little bit too good a start for your liking, I would say.
Well, for my pockets, like on the basis I back Willie Mullins to win the Trainers' Championship, yeah, absolutely. But I'm absolutely delighted for Dan. We were discussing this a bit earlier. Yeah, I love the way that he wants to run his horses. Sometimes he'll take a view not to run them. I think Grey Dawning probably only going to run once, if at all, before the festival, and I think that's the right call. But he wants to run them, which is great for the game. So the trend here in the Coral Gold Cup, runners from the last 11 renewals, 5 from 32 in the Ultra, a 42% profit. They finished 70424 at Newbury. And this race has changed hugely. Prior to that trend starting 2014-15, you had to go back to Seagram in 1991 for the last Ultima winner it had produced. But earlier in the century, it produced Denman, Bobsworth, Lord Windermere to win the Gold Cup. It was a race for top class or potentially top class horses. Now it's a handicap for handicappers, albeit this was fiercely competitive. The race itself, when there's a 17.0 winner of a 24 runner handicap, I suppose lots of punters would have got the race wrong, but few would have got it as wrong as I did. I think when we reviewed the Paddy Power a couple of weeks ago, I said something like, I think Panic Attack will struggle for the rest of the season in handicaps. And given she quick and clear off a steady pace at Cheltenham, I certainly didn't think what she needed was a big step up in trip. But although they didn't look to go the stronger up they often do, the first 3 looked really good. They were in the van all the way, and the further they went, the better Panic Attack looked. Plenty of discussion about how she's the first to do the Paddy Power Coral Gold Cups double since Celestial Gold 2004. She's actually only the second to try, and Great Endeavour was 5 lengths fourth at Newbury. Now, for obvious reasons, many Paddy Power winners returned to Cheltenham for the December Gold Cup. But given that record, those who show up at Newbury need a bit more respect than I gave her. She'll get another hike for this, but with her £4 penalty, she was only in off 139 here. She's on such a roll, perhaps she can go in again. She's 13.0 for the Mares Chase. And as you might expect with a 24-runner Coral Gold Cup field, plenty of incident, few hard luck stories, ragged standing start again. I won't go into that too much, but the Doyen Chief practically refused. Pick Rock also nearly got left at the start, but well behind. He stayed on well to be 12 lengths fifth. He wanted to take out of the race. Ben Pauling said in the stable too, he's quite arrogant, needs his mind making up for him. So he's not a straightforward ride, but he's the type to pop up and win a big handicap when all goes well. Perhaps he's the one to strengthen that Ultima trend. Plenty never got into a jumping rhythm, including Resplendent Grey and Spanish Harlem. A couple of others were jumping well until they didn't. Mytown, who apparently was fit for his seasonal debut, jumped to his left a couple of times, but looked to be enjoying himself out front. Barely took off at the 9th and ended up on the floor. Blizzard of Oz looked to be in the mix until blundering at the cross fence 5 out. So it was a helter-skelter of a typical Coral Gold Cup. And with solid but fairly exposed third season chasers in 3-Car Bragg and the Strong Travelling, the Changing Man, Chasing Panic Attack home, looks good but not spectacular form. And if I was going to take one from the ruck, it'd be Intense Raffles, who ran well for a long way before predictably getting outpaced when they quickened in the straight. much softer ground, a marathon trip's what he wants. This was a good effort. And it's worth remembering he was giving the now 169 rated Nick Rocket £3 when beat 3/4 of a length in the Bobby Joe in February. He's rated 155 in Ireland, running off 157 here. Many will think he's caught between two stools, but I think when he gets his conditions, he can win another big handicap. But as you said, Daniel, first and foremost, brilliant training performance to get a mare who's rising 10 to win the two biggest handicap chases of the autumn in Britain. Hats off to Dan Skelton.
Yeah, what happened? What would have happened, Donn, if she did run on the plate in March? I guess is what we should be asking ourselves. But is she still an underrated horse based off this win, or do you think she'll get the respect now?
Yeah, oh no, absolutely. I think she's getting the respect all right. Look, she was a big price in the end, 17.0. She was well in. She got a £4 penalty for winning the Paddy Power. She was reassessed on £7 higher than a mark of 142. She's going to be reassessed now again. And as Matt says, she's 9 rising 10. She's only had 7 runs over fences though, so she's still relatively likely raced over fences. And the times of the race were really interesting. She was very good through the last 4 furlongs. She was fastest by over a second and a half through the last 4 furlongs. So she was up at the pace early on, and she picked up from that prominent position, which was impressive. And she saw at the trip really well. Coming as it did not too long after the new Lions fall at Newcastle, you can see how much it meant to the Skelton. So, like as Matt said, fair play to them. And they are setting Dan is setting a good pace in his Trainers' Championship. But I still think come March and April, they're the months in which Willie made his ground last year, and I'm sure it'll be the same this year. But on the race, it was a race in which it was a positive to be prominent. The finishing speed of 108% of overall speed, according to Race IQ. And the first 3 home, they were in the first 5 from early. Panic Attack, 3-card Bragg, and the Changing Man. Big run by 3-card Bragg, up £6 for winning at Cheltenham the time before that. And he stuck to his task well to get back into second place in front of the Changing Man, who again ran a big race in defeat. He's only won 1 of his 14 chases. He's finished second 7 times and third twice. So he's a horse who always runs well in these big races without necessarily going and winning it. But fully agree with Matt on Pickrock. There were 3 horses as well as the Diane Quest who were inconvenienced by the start. The Pickrock was one, Gorgeous Tom was another, Catate Dory was another, and those 3 finished 4th, 5th, and 6th. I think they can both be marked, both 3 of them. All 3 can be marked up on the bare form of their runs. They were well back in the field early on. Gorgeous Tom stuck to his task well. He stayed on to finish 4th. He stays well. He'll probably be even better and better ground. And he's a horse who's got good form over intermediate trips, and still remains unexposed over staying trips. And that comment applies to Pickrock as well. He's had 9 chases, but he's only 7 rising 8. He won his beginner's chase at Huntingdon on his previous run. He's got his mark of 133. He stayed on well to take 5th place there on Saturday. He ran in the Golden Miller chase at the Cheltenham Festival back in March. That's obviously over the intermediate trip. And he was well beaten in that. But I think there could be a bit more to come from him over longer trips. He was really well supported as well. He was sent off 7.0 in the end. So I think he's as Matt does, these are a horse to take out of it. And Catate Dory, the horse that I backed, he was badly inconvenienced by the start. He plotted his way through. He made his ground and got into a position from which he could challenge. But I suspect he just expended so much energy in making that ground. He just didn't have anything left to give in the end, and he finished 6th. He's only had 6 chases as well. I think there could be more to come from him as well. He and Pickrock and Gorgeous Tom, they're all 7-year-olds rising 8, and I think all 3 are worthwhile just keeping an eye on.
Okay, long list there of beaten horses to keep an eye on. Long distance hurdle, Donn, we'll start with you. Thought Strong Leader had gone. I thought Sean Bone had timed his run well, but in Poitois, in fairness to Nico, he was patient and ran out impressive enough winner.
Yeah, he was an impressive winner, and look, he was good when he won that race at Aintree, in which they took out all the flights in the home straight. He was impressive in winning that. I kind of had to go and see him doing it again, but he did exactly that, and he was held up as well off a sedate pace, 111% finishing speed, and he's unexposed over these staying trips as well. He's a half brother to Fleur, who was a good horse, kind of quirky horse for Gordon Elliott, but a good horse. He won over 3 miles over hurdles at Clonmel. He finished 3rd in the Grand National Trial at Punchestown. He finished 3rd as well in Galopin des Champs Martin Pipe Hurdle. So Imposed Trois, he won that per temps qualifier easily at Aintree. He finished 2nd in the Coral Cup last year, and as you were discussing earlier on, it looks like a good, strong Coral Cup. But again, stepping up in trip, it looks like it's seen him reach a new level. And no, he deserves to be in the Stayers Hurdle conversation for sure. And like you, Dan, I thought it was Strong Leader's Day. He's a horse who's at his best on flat tracks. Aintree, Newbury, they're the tracks that suit him best. He won this race last year. He won the Liverpool Hurdle in 2024 as well, and finished second behind Hidden Valley Lake in the Liverpool Hurdle this year, last season. And it looked like Ollie Murphy had trained him for this race. He stuck on well to beat Take No Chances in the West Yorkshire Hurdle on his previous run, and he kicked on. I suppose he was a little bit of a sitting duck in the end for Impose Trois, who had enough time and who had the class and the pace to get there, but he did off a sedate pace. He quickened up well, and he won nicely in the end. Like, Strong Leaders run his race. I wouldn't be thinking about him until the Liverpool Hurdle again at Aintree. If he does go and run at Cheltenham, I'd let him run. But Impose Trois, yeah, he deserves to be in the Stayers Hurdle conversation for sure.
Okay, man, it is the Cheltenham Trail. So talk to this in the context of maybe what we saw from Teahupoo and Ballyburn.
Yeah, you would say these are horses who look a bit of a level below that, but Impose Trois is much less exposed, and he's a really interesting type. As Donn said, definitely in the picture. The trend here is that the long distance produced 7 of the first 16 Stayers Hurdle winners this century, 6 doing the double, but the 18 runners in the 9 renewals since have all been beaten. And between 1996 and 2016, Solwit, the only Irish train winner of the Stayers, an unfashionable division in Ireland, but with more and more the best horses in Ireland in recent years, and they're being in fewer and fewer hands, more of an incentive to split them up. So 7 of the last 9 Stayers Hurdles, including the last 5, have gone to Ireland. And that's meant races like the long distance, which have been excellent Stayers Hurdle guides in times of British domination, much less so these days. And apart from Impose Trois, it looked a relatively ordinary race in terms of the Stayers Hurdle. You wouldn't fancy any of them. Donn was saying, half brother Fleur, he's a little bit quirky himself, I think. Tends to be a bit keen off the steady gallop right here. Made a mess of the last, but Nico didn't panic. Won cosily in the end, but didn't ask him for too much. Nicky said he's shows nothing at home, so nobody knows how good he is. He had cheek pieces on for his last 3 runs last season. No headgear this season. So you wonder if you keep blinkers up your sleeve, put them on for the Stayers Hurdle, but then does that light him up? He'll have to go that route now. This wasn't a stamina test because Donn was explaining they've gone very steadily, but you'd be hopeful he'd stay in a strongly run race. He does look like it. The flip side is you do get plenty of steadily run Stayers Hurdles. He's plenty of tactical speed. So I mentioned that last week that 8 Stayers Hurdle winners this century, including 3 of the last 7, have contested a handicap earlier in the season. This does feel like a division in need of a new star, so don't hold it against Impose Trois. He's come through the handicap ranks. 13.0 sounds about right. He's a horse I want to see probably against a top notcher before I can really get a handle on him. The other one to take out of the race, Take No Chances, who ran another good race in a grade 2 under the full £6 penalty. Just got chinned in the West Yorkshire previously. Last in a steadily run race, didn't help her cause, but ran on well close home. She's an unconsidered 34.0 chance for the Mayor's Hurdle. There's not much depth to that, especially if Lossiemouth goes the champion hurdle route. Take No Chances, tough and game. It wouldn't be the worst 34.0 anti-post long shot.
Okay, and stick with you, Matt, and hit your trends for the John Frankham Novice Chase at Newbury. I would ordinarily go to you and say that the Irish Novice Chases around this weekend are going to turn out better trials for the Cheltenham Festival, but this is an interesting enough trend, I have to say.
Yeah, good strong trend and a good strong race. And the trend is winners have finished 2-1 P5-1-1 in the Broadway, 59% profit. Race has a long history of producing stars. You know, Denman, Bobsworth, Coney all won the Gold Cup, Clandesabo, 2 King Georges, Gloria Victis, Champ Cheddar, Cochet, Dinas, Remittance Man back in the day. Now, it won't do so every year. And as you said, Danny, with fewer of the best horses in Britain now, it's likely to do so less frequently. But this looked a really good renewal. I suspect the first 3 home could all be amongst the highest rated British novices come the end of the season. And Wendigo hadn't been seen to best effect in the Albert Bartlett when getting balked, stumbling 2 out, still only beaten 8 lengths in 5th. Was mugged on chasing debut by Wade Out. Gavin Sheehan put his hands up on Friday to get him beaten there. And that form still looked pretty good. Wade Out won a listed race at Cheltenham and 2 of the other 3 won next time. Both Jamie Snowden and Gavin Sheehan said the ground at Newbury on Friday, which they thought was good up home straight, quicker than ideal, especially at this 2 mile 4 trip. Wendigo jumped decently, and as at Worcester, he jumped best at the business end. Gavin said he had to wake him up coming into the straight. He might be the type that needs to be kept focused and does his best work in the heat of battle. Looks sure to improve again for 3 miles. Jamie's rooting the Quarto Star afterwards. He said he's got a hunch Wendigo's slight preference for going left-handed, but it's common to get quite goodish ground in the Quarto Star. Can be a real test of speed at the trip. And though he's won this over 2-4, I'm not sure that'd be ideal. The Hampton at Warwick in the middle of January might be a good next target. You'd have a good chance of getting soft ground there. And whilst Wendigo showed here and in the Albert Bartlett, he's fine on a sound surface. If it comes up soft in the Broadway, as it has in 6 of the last 8 renewals, he'll handle it well. So it's early days. Final demand sets a high bar, but I wouldn't want to be laying 17.0 about Wendigo for the Broadway. He looks a really good staying novice. No questions asked, tanked through the race, comfortably seen off in the end. Not sure how much he finds for pressure, but equally it might be the case he's not getting home over 2-4 in a race of this quality. Ben Pauling did say in the Racing Post stable tour that he was open-minded about whether he's ideally suited by 2 or 2.5. Looks worth a go at something like the Wayward Lad, see if he's a 2-miler. He looks to have the talent to win graded novice chases. A similar mark certainly applies to Regent Stroll, who's a real handful. 2 handlers, Red Hood in the paddock. Paul Nicholls has said he was maturing all the time and much better at home this year, but pulling going to the start, and then when the race began, he just pulled hard and never gave himself a chance. And whilst Harry Cobden was typically considerate once his chance had gone, I doubt he'd been able to finish materially closer than the 6 1/4 lengths he was beaten if he'd been ridden out. But what it did suggest was that he's got plenty of stamina as he kept going despite wasting so much energy. And Paul said afterwards he might go for a beginners at Wincanton in 2 or 3 weeks. Now that sounds like a really good plan. Keep him in calmer waters for a while, get experience into him, keeping him busy might help get the freshness out of him. In no way is he a handicap plot, he's just Larry. But if he starts to behave, he could follow in Caldwell Potter's footsteps and end up well handicapped for the novice handicap chase at the festival. Whether he take the occasion is another matter. But as is often the case, this looked a really good race. I think it'll be form to follow over the winter and the spring.
Okay, Don, Matt's fairly positive on Wendigo, no questions asked, and Regent Stroll from that race. Do you agree?
Yeah, no, it was a really interesting race. And Wendigo, yeah, he stayed on really well. Looked like no questions asked, was traveling way better on the run to the second last. Actually jumped on, went to the front over the second last. He looked the most likely winner by far. But Wendigo, he's tough, isn't he? And he goes well on this type of flat track. And he proved in the Albert Bartlett Hurdle he can go well on the undulations of Cheltenham as well. Interesting about the left-handed, right-handed thing. The last time he ran right-handed was at Ludlow back in November last year, and he did jump a bit to his left. So it may be if he does go to the Quarto Star chase, that's just one worth keeping an eye on. But he's only had 2 runs over fences, just the second run, and as Matt was saying, weighed out, enhanced the form of his last run when he went and won the listed race at Cheltenham next time. And 143 rated hurdler, who's almost certainly going to be better now over fences. Yeah, he's interesting with when stamina's at a premium going up in trip now. That should suit him. He's a 3-mile chaser in the making. No questions asked. By contrast, it looks like he's such a strong traveling horse. I think that somebody did mention the Wayward Lad chase, as Matt said after the race, and that would be an interesting project back down in trip. He ran in the Martin Pipe Hurdle last year. He was well down the field, and that's a stayers race. So 2.5 miles over fences, I'm sure he can get it. Like he won on his chasing bow. He won a novice handicap chase at Ascot over 2 miles and 3 earlier last month. So a kind of a speed test, 2.25 miles, or a speed test over 2.5, or even dropping down to 2. That could be that could see him in a much better light. And Regent Stroll, yeah, like he's obviously hugely talented. He gave Honesty Policy a real race in the Mersey Hurdle, and Honesty Policy then went and finished second behind Jasmine DeVoe in the Grade 1 3-mile novices hurdle at the Punchestown Festival. He could be an interesting horse among the Stayers Hurdle picture this season as well. He wore a hood that day at entry. He didn't wear a hood on Saturday, so I'm sure the hood will be coming back on for his first run over fences. But for him to do what he did, like he was so keen and so free and fresh through the early part of the race. Even Harry Cobden couldn't get him to come back. So whenever they closed up on him and when they gathered around him, you just thought he'd just fall back through them, but he didn't. He stuck to his task well. So he's obviously got buckets of talent in order to be able to do that. And yeah, with the hood back on and with this run under his belt, the freshness of a season of debut done, he could take a step forward. Interesting, Matt saying about the Caldwell Potter race, the Golden Miller at the Cheltenham Festival. If he does become well handicapped through no fault of his own, that's a very interesting. That's a good shout. But he's definitely a horse that I keep in mind, and whenever he does learn to settle, he could be very good indeed.
Yeah, look, a lot to get through there in the weekend review, but there was so much good race and we had to cover all those, and we've left out a few as well, of course. Matt, 3 eye catchers, so kick off there one by one, starting with Newton Tornado.
Yeah, he made all and won easily at Bangor over 3 miles. Only blemish, he was jumping out to the right. It was a bit of a surprise at Cheltenham the previous time on the turning old course. He jumped straight and true until coming down. Rebecca Curtis, an excellent record at the festival in staying races. For 6 festival winners, 3 in 3 mile races, 2 in the National Hunt Chase. She won the first renewal of that as a 0 to 145 handicap last season with 80 Kalur off 135. And 80 Kalur was beaten off 122 on his chasing debut before winning off 125 and 130 before the festival success. Newton Tornado won off 120 here. A decent hike for that tomorrow, won by 9 lengths. And Rebecca said before the season is able to, he disrespected hurdles raw last season, strengthened up over the summer, and so she expected him to be a much better chaser. 124 got a run in the National Hunt Chase in March, so it'd be interesting to see whether Curtis plots a route back to that. Secondly, Skylight Hustle, who made all absolutely bolted up in a 2 mile maiden hurdle at Fairyhouse, jumping really well. Gordon said he'd been very keen, and once he learned to settle, he'd be exciting because his own work had been good. He did look to be getting the hang of things here. This was really promising, albeit I'm not sure how strong a maiden it was for the meeting. But what's been noticeable is how much improvement between their first and second runs Gordon's novices seem to be making this season. He said he left them needing a run more for their seasonal debut this term. So that suggests we should be slower to judge them in previous years, but also they may have a better chance of holding their form better through to Punchestown. So he looks one for the notebook. And finally, Talk the Talk, who won the 4-year-old grade 3 at Fairyhouse at Amsterdam, won last year. This added to the feeling that the last season's juveniles were a weak crop, which was enhanced again by the 2 mile handicap hurdle at Fairyhouse. Mercia had a £13 penalty for winning the anniversary, but she and the Fred Winter 6th Wenrock batted out of the way by the first season hurdlers. Talk the Talk coming clear of the promising I'm Slippy. Talk the Talk jumped and travelled what was just his 3rd career start. Looks to be on a steep upward curve, taking this rising grade in his stride. It'd be interesting to see how Joseph O'Brien plots his campaign from here. Having beaten a 141 rated Mercia, 11.5 lengths of receipt of £6, doesn't look as if the handicap route is planned, often what we associate with Joseph for the festival, Martin Pipes and Fred Winters. He's still a novice. He looks well worth a crack at a grade 1.
Okay, that's Talk the Talk, Skylight, Hustle, and we have Newton Tornado for Matt. Don, we already have Blake beaten by Cocktail Brute, so we've covered him. Touch Me Not was second in a Fairyhouse handicap chase.
Yeah, Blake, I just thought Blake showed an extra dimension to him, that he could lie up with a fast pace and he could quicken off it and finish second to a very good horse in Cocktail Brew. He's a talented horse off the flat rating in the 90s, so there could be more to come from him. Yeah, Touch Me Not, he's not unexposed or anything like it. I just thought he did well to get as close to Drumgill in the end, given that he was taken on for the early lead. The finishing speed was, well, Drumgill was 98%, his was 96%. And he had to go fast. It was a kind of a standing start as well. He didn't get away that quickly. He was slow over the first fence. He was taken on for the Riba Mirzor West. And in the end, he led from Jete Porte and she faded to finish 8th. Mirzor West was pulled up. So it was a race in which it was an advantage to come from the rear, as Drumgill did. Fair play to Drumgill. He was gutsy, John Ryan's horse, in winning. But Touch Me Not, he's a classy horse. He finished second behind Majborough in the Irish Arkle last season in front of Firefox. He finished second behind Lauda Sud in the Henry VIII chase at Sandown on this weekend coming up. Last year, when he made a bad mistake early on, he won the Craddockstown chase last year. So he's a classy horse, and he's got a rating of 149. Who I look, it's high enough, but I still think there could be more in him. And he's a horse who, if it looks like there's not that much competition for the early pace, then his front running or his forward going style of racing is a positive. And yeah, I just think he could be marked up on the form of that run the last day. And the last one is Clint Madrick, who won a novices hurdle at Newbury on Saturday. That's been it's been won by some luminaries of the past. The New Lion won it last year. Jim Cook Blues won it. Stay Away Faye won it. Stage Star won it. Brave Man's Game won it. So it's a race that can be a really good pointer. And I thought he was very good in winning it. I think he's gone a little bit under the radar. He'd finished 4th behind Cockbrenner at Fast Last on his previous run when he made a mistake at the second last. Cockbrenner reopposed on Saturday and he was put in a short price favourite. But Clint Madrick, it was a good battle between the two of them. He got home by a head in the end, but he was back in the field early on off a moderate enough pace. He was only 6th at the top of the home straight. The first 4 had a break on the others, but he travelled well and he picked up well when Kevin Brogan asked him to. He went to the line strongly from Kalkbrenner. Again, his finishing 4 furlongs were fast, much faster than Kalkbrenner's, and the two of them were way faster than the third best, Buddy Holly, who finished third in the end, Nicky Henderson's horse. There's only a second run over hurdles, and he's a horse who could even step out and trip. This was 2 miles, 4.5 furlongs. He stays well. He's from the family of Lord de Menil, so he's a horse who could even go up to 2 miles 6 or 3 miles in time, but he's only a 5-year-old with 2 runs over hurdles under his belt, and I think there could be more to come from him.
Okay, that's Klimt, Madrick, KLIMT, Touch Me Not, and Blake as the 3 eye catchers for Donn. And Matt, before we go, you want to have a quick general point?
Yeah, this is weather related this time of the year. When we get cut in the ground, as we have this year, the first 3 weeks we covered on the trail tend to be underestimated in terms of being guides to the festival. So 2 seasons ago, when we had the inaugural Irish Autumn Festivals, when the weather played ball, 12 of the 18 Irish train winners at the festival ran on one of the 6 cards at Navan Punchestown and Fairyhouse. And it's not as if they weren't showing good form at the autumn festivals. 5 won, 5 finished second, the other 2 finished third. And 5 of the 9 British train winners also ran at big meetings over those 3 weekends. So that was 17 of the 27 festival race winners, and from a relatively manageable number of races to analyse. So this is form punters should be really focusing on, especially if you're an anti-post punter trying to get an edge over the winter.
Okay, so don't underestimate these horses in the first 3 episodes. If you're listening on the podcast and you miss some of the eye catchers, just head to our YouTube. You can see them on the ticker, and indeed all of Matt's trends on the ticker as well on YouTube if you want to choose to watch that way, or just have a recap of the trends. And we'll be back next week to review another weekend's race, and hopefully there's a little bit less and we can talk a little bit towards the Cheltenham Festival, but there's just too much at the moment. It's great stuff. If you can take 2 seconds to hit that like button and subscribe completely for free wherever you're watching or listening, be much appreciated. It helps us continue to make this content and get it out to a wider audience. We'll chat to you all next week. Enjoy the week's racing. Bye bye.